Imagine England in the late 15th century. The long and bloody Wars of the Roses have finally ended. A new king, Henry VII, sits on the throne. He is the first of the Tudor dynasty. Henry has a problem, you see. He needs to show everyone that he is the rightful king. He needs to display his power, his wealth, and his authority. How does a king do that? He could build grand palaces or host lavish feasts. But Henry had a cleverer idea. He decided to create a magnificent new gold coin. This was not just any coin. It would be the largest and most valuable coin ever seen in England. It was a statement, a piece of political theatre you could hold in your hand. This new coin was to be called the Sovereign. The name itself was a stroke of genius. It instantly connected the coin to the king, the ultimate ruler of the land. It was a constant reminder of who was in charge. Before this, English coins were often smaller and their designs were simpler. They were practical tools for trade. But Henry VII wanted something more. He envisioned a coin that was a work of art, a symbol of the new Tudor age. It was designed to impress not just his own subjects, but also the powerful kings and queens of Europe. It was England's calling card, announcing a new era of stability and splendour after decades of civil war. The order to create this coin went out in 1489. It was a bold and ambitious project. The coin was to be struck from 23-carat gold, making it incredibly pure and valuable. This was a level of quality that was difficult to achieve and maintain. It required the finest gold and the most skilled minters. The coin's large size meant it wasn't really meant for everyday shopping. You wouldn't use a sovereign to buy a loaf of bread or a pint of ale. Instead, it was for large transactions between wealthy merchants, for royal gifts, and for the king to show off his immense wealth. It was a power move, pure and simple, minted in glittering gold. So, the story of the sovereign begins not just as a piece of money, but as a piece of powerful propaganda. It was born from a king's need to secure his legacy and project an image of unshakable authority. Henry VII understood that money is more than just currency. It is a message. Every time one of these beautiful gold coins was seen or exchanged, it reinforced the Tudor claim to the throne. It told a story of majesty, stability, and divine right. This coin was the foundation stone of a numismatic legend, a golden journey that would span more than 500 years of British history, full of drama, disappearance, and dazzling comebacks. Let's take a closer look at this remarkable first sovereign. What made it so special? Well, for a start, its design was breathtakingly grand. On one side, the obverse, you had a magnificent portrait of King Henry VII himself. He wasn't just shown as a simple head and shoulders. Oh no, he was depicted in full coronation regalia, seated on his throne. He holds an orb and sceptre, the traditional symbols of royal power. This image was designed to be awe-inspiring. It declared that this was not just a man, but God's chosen ruler on earth. The level of detail was extraordinary for the time, a testament to the skill of the engravers at the Royal Mint. The other side of the coin, the reverse, was just as symbolic. It featured the magnificent Tudor rose. This wasn't just a pretty flower. The Tudor rose was a clever combination of the red rose of the House of Lancaster and the white rose of the House of York. By merging these two symbols, Henry VII was sending a clear message of unity. The Wars of the Roses were over. The two rival houses were now united under the new Tudor dynasty. At the centre of the rose was a large shield bearing the royal arms of England. This powerful combination of symbols told a story of peace, strength, and a unified kingdom, all stamped onto a piece of precious gold. The coin was also physically impressive. It was large, with a diameter of around 42 millimeters, and it was heavy. It contained nearly half a troy ounce of gold. Its official value was set at £1 sterling, or 20 shillings. This made it the very first pound coin, though it looked nothing like the small, thick pound coins we might know today. This high value meant it was a coin for the elite. It was used for settling major debts, paying taxes to the crown, and for international trade where its purity and weight were respected. It was a status symbol for the wealthy merchants and nobles who were lucky enough to possess one. So the first sovereign was much more than just money. It was a masterpiece of political marketing. It was a history lesson, a declaration of power, and a work of art, all rolled into one. Henry VII had succeeded in creating a coin that was worthy of his new dynasty. It was a tangible representation of his ambition and his vision for England. Every element, from the king on his throne to the united Tudor rose, was carefully chosen to reinforce the same message. The Tudors were here to stay. This coin set a new standard for royal coinage, a standard of beauty and symbolic power that would influence coin design for centuries to come. After Henry VII, the sovereign continued under the later Tudor monarchs, but it began to change. Each king and queen put their own stamp on it, quite literally. Henry VIII, a king known for his larger-than-life personality and his grand spending, issued sovereigns that reflected his own image. His coins still showed the monarch on the throne, but the style evolved. Later in his reign, Henry VIII famously debased the coinage. This means he reduced the amount of precious metal in the coins to get more money to pay for his wars and extravagant lifestyle. The gold sovereign, however, largely maintained its high purity, remaining a symbol of royal prestige even as other coins suffered. The coin continued through the short reigns of Edward VI and Mary I. Then came Queen Elizabeth I. Her long and glorious reign was a golden age for England, and her coinage reflected this. Elizabeth's sovereigns were beautiful coins, showing a more refined and elegant portrait of the Queen on her throne. They were a symbol of England's growing confidence and power on the world stage. But when Elizabeth died in 1603, the Tudor dynasty ended. The throne passed to her cousin, James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England. This marked the beginning of the Stuart era, and it would bring big changes for the sovereign. King James I was keen to express the new unity between England and Scotland. He introduced new coins to reflect this union of the crowns. He continued to mint the sovereign, but he also introduced a new gold coin called the Unite. As the name suggests, its purpose was to symbolize the United Kingdoms. For a while, both coins existed, but the sovereign's star was beginning to fade. The political winds were changing, and the coinage changed with them. The focus shifted away from the grand throne-based design of the original sovereign towards simpler, more modern portrait coins that were more practical for a growing merchant economy. The final blow for the original sovereign came after the English Civil War. In 1649, King Charles I was executed, and England became a republic, the Commonwealth. A kingless nation had no need for a coin called a sovereign. The monarchy was eventually restored in 1660, but the old coin did not return. A new machine-made gold coin called the guinea was introduced in 1663. The guinea, named after the West African source of its gold, became Britain's principal gold coin. And so the magnificent Tudor sovereign, the coin of kings on thrones, disappeared from circulation. It seemed its golden journey had come to an end after just over 170 years. For nearly 200 years, the sovereign was just a memory, a relic from a bygone Tudor and Stuart age. The guinea was king of the coins. But then, in the early 19th century, everything changed. Britain had just fought the long and incredibly expensive Napoleonic Wars against France. The country's finances were in a mess, and the coinage was in chaos. Old, worn-out coins were circulating alongside forgeries. The government knew something had to be done. In 1816, they passed the Coinage Act. This was a massive overhaul of the entire monetary system, known as the Great Recoinage. As part of this reform, a brand new gold coin was needed. The government decided to retire the guinea and introduce a new coin with a value of exactly £1 sterling. And what name did they choose for this new coin? They reached back into history and revived the name sovereign. It was a brilliant choice. It connected the new coin to a glorious royal past, suggesting stability and tradition at a time of great change. This new sovereign, first issued in 1817, was the direct ancestor of the coin we know today. It was a little smaller and lighter than its Tudor namesake, but it was set to become even more famous. The design of this new modern sovereign was a masterpiece. On the obverse was a portrait of the reigning monarch, King George III. But it was the reverse design that truly captured the public's imagination. It featured a stunning image of St. George on horseback, slaying a dragon. This dramatic and heroic scene was created by a brilliant Italian engraver named Benedetto Pistrucci. His design was a work of genius. It was dynamic, powerful, and timeless. It represented the triumph of good over evil, a fitting symbol for a nation that had just defeated Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo 2 years earlier. This new sovereign was an instant success. It was struck to an incredibly high standard of quality and purity. It contained a precise amount of gold, making it trustworthy and reliable. This was crucial for rebuilding confidence in the nation's currency. The coin quickly became the backbone of Britain's economy. But its influence would not be confined to the British Isles. As the British Empire expanded throughout the 19th century, the sovereign travelled with it. It was carried in the pockets of soldiers, merchants, administrators and explorers, destined to become the most widely recognised gold coin in the entire world. The legend was reborn. The reign of Queen Victoria from 1837 to 1901 was the golden age of the sovereign. For over 60 years, this one coin became synonymous with the power and reach of the British Empire. As Britain's influence spread across the globe, so did its money. The sovereign became the unofficial currency of international trade. A merchant in Hong Kong, a banker in Mumbai, or a farmer in Australia might never have seen Britain, but they knew and trusted the gold sovereign. Its precise weight and purity were guaranteed, making it a stable and reliable store of value in a rapidly changing world. It was, in effect, the 19th century's US dollar. During Victoria's long reign, several different portraits of the Queen appeared on the sovereign's obverse. The first was the beautiful young head portrait, showing the Queen as a girl of 18 when she came to the throne. This design was used for over 50 years. Then, in 1887, for her Golden Jubilee, the Jubilee head was introduced. This showed a more mature queen wearing a small crown. Finally, the old head or veiled head portrait was issued in 1893, depicting the elderly queen in mourning for her husband, Prince Albert. These changing portraits act like a timeline, marking the different stages of Victoria's life and reign on the nation's most important coin. To meet the enormous demand for the coin across the empire, the Royal Mint did something unprecedented. It opened branch mints overseas. The first was established in Sydney, Australia in 1855, followed by Melbourne and then Perth. Later, branch mints were also opened in Canada, India and South Africa. You can tell where a sovereign was made by looking for a tiny mint mark, an S for Sydney, M for Melbourne, and so on. This global production network was extraordinary. It meant that a British gold sovereign could be minted in Australia from locally mined gold and then spend its life circulating in Asia or Africa, a true symbol of a globalized economy. The sovereign was more than just a trade coin. It was a potent symbol of British identity and imperial power. It represented the stability of the pound sterling and the might of the Royal Navy that protected the trade routes. To own a sovereign was to hold a piece of the empire in your hand. For millions of people around the world, the image of Queen Victoria on one side and St. George slaying the dragon on the other was the ultimate symbol of reliability and authority. The coin's journey during this period perfectly mirrors the journey of Britain itself, from a European power to a global superpower on which the sun never set. At the dawn of the 20th century, the gold sovereign was at the peak of its power. It was, quite simply, the undisputed king of coins, circulating freely not just in Britain, but across the world. In Britain, people could walk into any bank and exchange their paper banknotes for gold sovereigns. This was known as the gold standard, and the sovereign was its physical embodiment. It was real money, a tangible store of wealth that people trusted completely. You might find a few in a shopkeeper's till or in the wallet of a gentleman. It really seemed as though this golden age would last forever. But, you know, a storm was gathering in Europe that would change everything. In August 1914, the First World War broke out. This was a total war, a conflict on a scale the world had never seen before. It required a colossal amount of money to pay for guns, shells, ships, and the wages of millions of soldiers. The British government needed to gather every possible resource, and that included gold. Gold was essential for buying weapons and supplies from neutral countries like the United States. The government needed to build up a massive national gold reserve. So they took a dramatic step. They asked the British public to turn in their gold sovereigns. In a famous campaign, the government urged citizens to exchange their gold coins for paper money as an act of patriotism. Posters appeared with slogans like, "The German is hoarding gold." Don't you do it. People queued up at banks and post offices to hand over their beloved sovereigns for the war effort. In 1917, the production of sovereigns for circulation in Britain stopped. The coin that had been a familiar part of daily life for a century vanished from people's pockets almost overnight. It was a necessary sacrifice, but it marked the end of an era. The age of gold as everyday money was over. Although production in London for circulation had ceased, the branch mints in the empire continued to strike sovereigns for a few more years. But the world had changed. After the war, Britain was heavily in debt and could not afford to return to the gold standard in the same way. The sovereign never went back into general circulation in the UK. It had become too valuable, its gold content worth more than its face value of £1. The coin that had once been a common sight became a rarity, a treasured keepsake from a lost world before the Great War. Its role as a workhorse of the global economy had come to a sudden and dramatic end. After its withdrawal from circulation during World War I, the sovereign entered a long period of hibernation. For decades, it was not a coin for the people, but a tool for governments and central banks. It was used to settle international debts held in vaults as part of national reserves, but it was not seen in the high street. The Royal Mint produced a small number of sovereigns in 1925, but these were not for circulation. For the average person, the gold coin was now a thing of the past, a grandparent's memory. It really did seem the sovereign's story might have ended in the trenches of the First World War. However, the world of coin collecting was growing. People began to appreciate the sovereign not for its monetary value, but for its history, beauty and rarity. Collectors sought out coins from different years with different portraits and from the various branch mints. A sovereign was no longer just a pound. It was a piece of Victoria's empire, a relic from the age of gold. This growing interest from collectors, known as numismatists, kept the flame of the sovereign alive. The coin was transitioning from being currency to being a collectible artifact, prized for its story as much as for its gold content. The big comeback happened in 1957. By this time, the world's economy had stabilized after the Second World War. There was a huge international demand for gold coins, partly as a hedge against inflation and partly to combat a rise in counterfeit sovereigns that were being produced illegally. To meet this demand and reassert its authority, the Royal Mint decided to start striking sovereigns again. These new coins, bearing the portrait of the young Queen Elizabeth II, were not intended for circulation. They were bullion coins, made for investors and collectors who wanted to own physical gold in a recognizable and trusted form. This decision was a turning point. It gave the sovereign a new purpose for the modern age. The coin was reborn as a premier investment product. People bought them to save for the future, to give as traditional gifts at weddings and christenings, or simply to own a piece of history. The annual minting of bullion sovereigns continued, and the coin's popularity soared. It had successfully found a new role. It was no longer the money you used to buy your groceries, but it was once again the world's most famous gold coin, prized by a new generation for its enduring quality and legendary heritage. The sovereign's journey continued to evolve as it entered the 21st century. While the classic St. George and the Dragon design by Benedetto Pistrucci remained the standard, the Royal Mint began to get more creative. It started issuing special commemorative editions of the sovereign with unique, one-year-only reverse designs. These were often released to celebrate major royal events like Queen Elizabeth II's Golden Jubilee in 2002 or her Diamond Jubilee in 2012. These special issues were produced in smaller numbers, making them instantly desirable for collectors. It really added a new layer of excitement to the sovereign's story. The portraits of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse also kept the coin's story moving forward. Just like with Queen Victoria, the changing portraits marked the passage of time. Over her incredibly long reign, 5 different official portraits of the Queen graced the sovereign, showing her journey from a young monarch to a revered and elderly stateswoman. Each new portrait was a major event in the coin world, generating huge interest. This tradition of updating the monarch's effigy ensures that the sovereign is not just a static historical object, but a living coin that reflects the continuity of the monarchy. The collectability of the modern sovereign has become a huge part of its identity. Beyond the standard bullion coin, the Royal Mint now produces proof versions. These are the highest quality coins, struck multiple times with specially polished dies to create a flawless, mirror-like finish. They are true works of art, produced in very limited numbers and presented in beautiful cases with certificates of authenticity. These premium coins are aimed squarely at the collector's market. This has created a two-tiered system: the bullion, sovereign for investors, and the proof, sovereign for numismatists who appreciate craftsmanship and rarity. Following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, the sovereign entered another historic new chapter. For the first time in over 70 years, the coin featured the portrait of a king, Charles III. This transition was a momentous event, marking the end of one era and the beginning of another. Special memorial sovereigns were issued to honour the late Queen, alongside the first coins of the new king. This ensures that the sovereign continues its centuries-old tradition of chronicling British history, capturing the moments of succession and change for future generations to see, hold and treasure in gleaming gold. So, what is the final verdict on this incredible coin? The gold sovereign is so much more than a piece of precious metal. It is a golden thread that runs through more than 500 years of British history. It began as a bold statement of power for a new Tudor king. It evolved with the fortunes of the monarchy, disappearing and then spectacularly returning to the world stage. It became the ultimate symbol of the British Empire's global reach, a coin known and trusted in every corner of the earth. It weathered the storm of world wars, transforming from everyday money into a treasured store of value. Today, the sovereign holds a unique dual identity. For the investor, it is a reliable and convenient way to own gold. Its history, its government guarantee, and its global recognition make it a safe haven in uncertain economic times. It is a solid, tangible asset that connects the modern financial world to the ancient allure of gold. This practical role ensures its continued relevance and production. It is a bullion coin of choice for people all over the world, just as it was for merchants 2 centuries ago. Its reputation for quality and integrity, built over generations, remains its greatest strength in the investment market. For the collector, the historian, and the admirer of British heritage, the sovereign is something more profound. It is a miniature historical document. Each coin tells a story. It speaks of the monarch who issued it, the era in which it was struck, and the artistic styles of the time. The changing portraits, the special commemorative designs, and the tiny mint marks all add to a rich and complex narrative. Holding a sovereign is like holding a direct link to the past, to the ambition of Henry VII, the majesty of Queen Victoria, or the resilience of Britain during wartime. It is a piece of history made tangible. In the end, the sovereign's lasting legacy is its incredible ability to adapt. It has changed its role, its design, and even its place of manufacture to survive and thrive through centuries of monumental change. It is a symbol of British continuity, craftsmanship, and history. It represents the enduring power of the monarchy and the nation's story, all captured on a small, glittering disc of gold. From a king's power play to a global currency, And now, to a collector's prize and investor's safeguard, the golden journey of the sovereign continues. It remains, without doubt, Britain's most famous and most fascinating coin.